All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow MyMangrovers, yeah, and then fellow researchers, fellow students, and friends from government agencies, friends from NGOs, and public at large. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today for the March 2022 edition of the MyMangrove Monthly Discourse. So MyMangrove refers to the Malaysian Mangrove Research Alliance and Network, a network gathering researchers, yeah, managers and fans of mangroves throughout Malaysia and throughout the tropics. And not only the tropics, actually the whole world, because we have friends, researchers in all parts of the world. And for example, we have our best friend here, Professor John Yong, all the way from Sweden. He's there out of the tropics, but work a lot in the tropics with many of us here in Malaysia too. So thank you very much. I cannot see all the participants at the moment because my screen is getting smaller now. What I can see is the face of our speaker today. So we are so glad, we are so fortunate, we are so lucky and very proud to have Dr. Chee our good friend at Universiti Sains Malaysia. She's a senior lecturer at Center for CMAX, Center for Marine and Coastal Studies, at the corner in Teluk Bahang in Penang, but she's also at the main campus in Minden, and super nice place here, Penang. I always love Penang. Actually, my father was born in Penang, so I love Penang for the nasi kandar and of course for the mangroves in Balik Pulau, for the heritage, for all the classical things in Penang. And but that's not the only thing we want to hear from Dr. Suyin today. What we want to hear today is about how powerful mangroves are as a nature-based solution to fix many of our issues we are facing today, not just in Malaysia, but throughout the tropics and perhaps throughout the globe. This is a global issue we are facing today. So many scientists have identified the power of blue carbon, for example, but Dr. Suyin in particular identified mangroves and other coastal habitats as a super powerful solution for issues concerning our coastlines in particular. And Dr. Suyin does not only study mangrove. I follow her updates from time to time. She's also looking at rock pools. These are very interesting things, and interesting niche to study. And there are so many other ideas, I'm pretty sure, from Dr. Suyin's talk today. Many of you will be enlightened and perhaps increase your interest and awareness about plenty opportunity in research in marine and coastal studies as well. So without further ado, Dr. Suyin, so we will have like about 50 to 1 hour talk by Dr. Suyin. Today is your day, so actually you can go longer if you want, but we try to cap it to 1.5 to 2 hours maximum for our session. Right. And then we will have a short, maybe half an hour to 45 minutes question and answer or discussion. And we will have a group photo, so please stay until the end so we can have that, because I usually use group photo as the proof of attendance to any meetings and send to my boss. So yeah, so without further ado, Dr. Suyin, you may share your screen now, and the screen is yours. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Share screen. Okay, I just put on my slides. So now I'm going to go into presentation mode. Okay, can everybody see my slides?
Looks perfect, Shireen. Thank you.
Okay. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time to attend my talk this afternoon. Many thanks also to Dr. Audrey for the invitation and CIMB Foundation for supporting the talk series. Today, I will be sharing a few things I know about mangroves as nature-based solutions and how they are perceived as nature's superpower to some of our environmental crises. Okay, first, let's start off with what sort of environmental crisis are we facing right now? Okay, pollution is a huge issue. We are 7.9 billion people living on Earth right now, and you can imagine the amount of waste generated by human beings. It's just monumental, and the way we manage this waste definitely needs improvement, don't you think? As it is, even with awareness and awareness campaigns and education, we are still seeing a lot of waste everywhere. Waste can come from land, they can come from sea, and they can be in physical and chemical forms. Physical ones are like plastics. Okay? Plastics makes up one of the most major pollutants on Earth right now, and you find them everywhere. In soil, on land, in the air we breathe, and also in our oceans. There is also chemical pollution, like those coming from oil spills and even from our own backyards in what we call urban runoffs. Another big crisis is land conversion and habitat degradation. As mentioned, we are now 7.9 billion people on Earth, and we are developing more and more land to cater for our own needs, to build homes for us to live in, to build recreational areas, facilities, roads, highways. And we tend to like living along coastlines. It's beautiful. There's the luxury of having, the sea just in front of us. And right now, 40% of the world's population is living within 100 kilometers of the coastline. And this is projected to increase. Okay, by 2050, we are expecting this number to reach 50% of 9.8 billion people. So you can imagine how concentrated this narrow strip, okay, between land and sea is. This is good for humans because we're creating space for ourselves, okay, for humans. But does it give anything back to nature? Are we doing it in a sustainable manner? That's a big question. Moving on, another big crisis is this, okay, for many countries, including Malaysia. We have large areas being inundated and covered by water, these floods. And when this happens, we can really see, and for some of us even feel, the effects of unsustainable development. Flooding like this dislocates many people and endangers lives, as we have seen and felt in the last few major flooding events, right, in our country. And this is not only happening in Malaysia, it's happening everywhere. In countries like Australia, for example, they've recently experienced major floods in places that have never been inundated before. So our coastlines are also experiencing erosions in rising scales and frequencies. And some of us might have seen or heard about the coastal erosion that's happening right here in Penang, in the tourist haven of Batu Fringhi, okay, where the 5-star hotels are. So these hotels are having to produce mitigation steps to prevent their coastlines from further eroding, right? All the tourists come here to enjoy the coastline. Suddenly the coastline is like that, is eroding. So, and this mitigation steps actually cost them a lot of money. Besides 5-star hotels, these things also affect, erosion also affects other coastal communities. And I feel that they are more affected when this happens because they lose their homes, their property, and some of them even have to relocate to other places. Now, all these crises here is besides the big one, climate change, the big Cs. And it's related issues like ocean warming, ocean acidification, sea level rise. So what can we do to slow this down or possibly even reverse it? Protecting the future of humanity and our planet requires really fast, bold global action. And governments, UN bodies, international organizations, and environmental experts, we have been developing ideas and methods to address a broad range of environmental and climate problems. So in 2015, all the United Nations member states adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Now, this is a blue, I think we've seen this almost everywhere. Right? We might have seen this in one place or another. This is a blueprint for peace and prosperity for the people and the planet for now and into the future. And at its heart, there are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all the countries, whether it's developed or developing, in global partnership. And it includes strategies that improve health and education, reduces inequality, spurs economic growth, all while tackling the main issue of climate change and working to preserve our oceans and our forests. Now, what underpins the Sustainable Development Goals is this nature-based solutions. And this nature-based solutions has appeared in the IPCC report recently many times. Now, why is this so? Because nature-based solutions support vital ecosystem services and our biodiversity. Okay? It gives us access to fresh water, it improves our livelihoods, our diets, supports food security. And researchers and practitioners worldwide are now looking to nature to solve humanity's biggest problems. Ecological restoration can be a powerful means of protecting the atmosphere, but we need to rewild on a massive scale. Okay. So the greatest potential that has been identified so far in protecting and restoring natural forests and allowing native trees to repopulate deforested land. So enter your humble tree. Tree planting is said to have quote-unquote mind-blowing potential to tackle climate and environmental crisis. So now we have reached the part where I share with you how mangrove trees are this magic and superpower in doing this. But before that, for our friends who are just joining us for the first time or learning about mangroves for the first time, let me first introduce these trees to you. So mangroves are a group of trees and shrubs that live in the coastal intertidal zone. You can recognize them immediately by their unique roots that are they either look like webs or pencils or stilts or even bended leaves, and they're submerged in water half the time. Mangrove trees thrive in hot, muddy, and salty conditions that would quickly kill most plants, but mangroves can survive. Okay, so how do they do it? So they do this through a series of impressive adaptations. They have a filtration system that keeps out most of the salt, okay, the salt water, and a complex root system that holds them in place holds them upright in the sediments where land meets sea. So not only do the mangroves manage to survive these challenging conditions, they also support an incredible diversity of creatures, including some species that can only be found in mangroves. Okay, so mangroves are really survivors. They are super trees. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at what makes them super. Mangroves can be a solution to climate change. A bit of background: climate change is primarily caused by burning fossil fuels that produces carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas. So carbon dioxide is the main cause of human-induced climate change. So how are mangroves a solution to climate change? Mangroves can suck carbon out of the air. Okay? They can sequester 4 times more carbon than rainforests can. What is carbon sequestration? Carbon sequestration is the process of capturing and then storing atmospheric carbon dioxide. So as the trees grow, they take carbon from the carbon dioxide and they use it as building blocks for their leaves, roots, and branches to grow. And once the leaves and older trees die, they fall to the muddy sediment below and take the stored carbon with them into the soil to be buried. Most of the carbon, therefore, is stored in the soil beneath the mangrove trees. And a study has found that mangrove soil can hold around 6.4 billion metric tons of carbon. That is a lot of carbon. On top of this, like any plant that photosynthesizes, they also produce oxygen. So you can get a green lung wherever they're planted. So mangrove trees, mangrove forests can play an important role in carbon removals, okay, because they are among the most carbon-dense ecosystems in the world. And if kept undisturbed, mangrove forest soils act as a long-term carbon sink that can lock carbon away for a millennia. Now, this buried carbon, just now, Dr. Audrey mentioned blue carbon. Okay, the buried carbon is called blue carbon. Blue carbon is a term for the carbon captured by the world's ocean and coastal ecosystems. So it can be from mangroves. Yes, it can also be from seagrass beds or even salt marshes. Mangroves make up less than 2% of the marine environments, but they account for 10 to 15% of carbon burial. The ability of these vegetated ecosystems to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere makes them really a significant net carbon sink, and they are increasingly being recognized for their role in mitigating climate change. However, if the ecosystems are degraded or damaged directly or indirectly by human activities, their carbon sink capacity is lost or affected, and the carbon that is stored in the soil is released, okay, resulting in carbon dioxide emissions, and then this then contributes to climate change. Mangroves can be deforested for many reasons, including making room for aquaculture farms or other, they can be harvested for their wood. We are developing a lot of our shorelines. That's how how mangroves are deforested. So studies have indicated that between the year 2000 and 2015, up to 122 million tons of this carbon has been released due to mangrove forest loss, okay? And this adds to global warming. Okay. Next, mangroves as solution to sea level rise. Okay, let's first talk a little bit about the issue, sea level rise. This graph here shows that how the sea level has been rising since the 1900s. Okay, and it projects it through to 2300. Okay, it says here, even under the most modest scenarios, scientists expect sea level rise to affect Earth's coastline significantly in the coming centuries. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, okay, has also raised alarm bells about the speed at which such change is happening. And scientists warn of the possibility of extreme sea level events becoming more and more frequent, and also when it happens, it will be very damaging. I also inserted here a map of the places where Malaysia will be underwater by 2050. So Selangor there's a lot of low-lying areas here, it seems, okay? And we should expect lots of relocation and migration landwards approaching 2050. So how can our humble mangrove forests help in mitigating sea level rise? Mangroves are really this dynamic ecosystem. They can trap sediment from tides in their root system, and so often considered as nature-based solutions to counter coastal flooding, as they can, to a certain extent, keep pace with sea level rise. So as sea levels rise, they also can move upwards. Mangroves are very resilient ecosystems, and they have survived extreme fluctuations in the sea level for the last 65 million years. Okay, that's a long time. How have they survived sea level rise in the past? For 65 million years. Well, there is through two mechanisms. One is through their ability to rise at rates that are greater or equal to sea level rise. And this is referred to as marsh accretion. So this graph here shows current accretion not really current line. This one is in 2008, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. It shows the accretion rates of mangroves relative to sea level rise. I couldn't get a more updated graph, but this graph here can illustrate my point quite well. As you can see, most of the dots are above the dashed line. This is the one-to-one line. Okay, that means that below ground root production coupled with sediment loads are allowing these forests to keep up with sea level rise and holding their ground by building up sediment amongst their tangled roots. Okay, this is the first mechanism. The second way is by moving inward. So yeah, it's very dynamic. This ecosystem is very dynamic. They can actually move. So it's not this is a trait that you cannot find with engineered structures, right? You put a seawall there, you wouldn't expect the seawall to move according to the sea level rise. But mangroves can do that because they're living things. Engineered structures are not. So they're dynamic like that. So in areas with high rates of sedimentation, the mangrove soil surfaces may rise at a rate which exceeds the local rate of sea level rise, such that the terrestrial species invade the land inwards, okay, landward areas. Sea level rise rates may be matched by a rise in mangrove soil surface elevation, allowing the mangroves to remain in the same location, possibly also colonizing landward areas. Okay, if the areas behind here is a suitable substrate and also suitable in topography. But sometimes mangrove soils may be unable to rise as fast as the local rate of sea level rise. So this would result in some deaths of trees in the lower areas, seaward here, okay, will result in some deaths here. But in this case, also mangroves are likely to invade landward areas, which now, because of the sea level rising, they are now in this tidal frame, okay, that allows them to survive the inward. So if the rate of the sea level rise is greater than the mangrove accretion, then mangroves are pressed to retreat landward so that they can maintain their preferred hydro periods. Okay. But whether they can migrate inwards, move landwards, this depends on various conditions. Okay, like the ability of the species themselves to colonize these new habitats. And it also depends on the presence of barriers. Okay, so sometimes we have roads coming through here, or there's a seawall or a breakwater here. So that would affect the ability of the mangroves to migrate because there is not enough space for them to do that. Okay. Okay, but nature-based solutions are themselves vulnerable to climate change impacts. The mangroves can only take so much. So these famously resilient, salt-tolerant, twisty trees have so far managed to keep pace with rising sea levels, providing really valuable buffer from storm surges and those harsh waves. But recently, researchers have found the forest limits. Okay, mangroves have limits. They cannot survive in seas rising faster than 7 millimeters per year. Okay, this is a report produced by scientists in the journal Sains. So how quickly seas rise over the next century will depend on the rate of global warming, which causes the seawater to expand and the ice sheets to melt. And that in turn depends on the rate of greenhouse gas emissions, okay, how fast we emit this gas. At present, sea levels are rising globally at an average rate of 3.4 millimeters per year. Okay, this is according to IPCC. But in the next few decades, that rate is projected to accelerate to between 5 to 10 millimeters by 2100. Okay, so this one here exceeds this. That could drown the forests, which acts as the buffer, protecting many coastlines around the globe. So we really need to be protecting our existing mangroves and restore as much as we can. And at the same time, we reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and that produces the greenhouse gases and causes global warming that in turn causes sea level rise. If we want to maintain this function, this mangrove function. In the same way, mangroves can also solve erosion issues along our coastlines. Okay, the dense roots of mangroves, their web of roots, help to bind and build soils. The above ground roots slow down water. So imagine water just coming through and it's really being slowed down greatly. And the roots also encourages deposition of sediments and reduces the erosion. So basically, the mangroves consolidate the soil, increases the thickness and the buildup of the land, which is really critical for, as sea level rise accelerates. Next, mangroves can be a solution to storm surges and harsh waves. With climate change comes the rise of intense storms and floods and natural disasters like typhoons, cyclones, tsunamis. Some people say natural disasters are not entirely natural at all, but are the consequence of our scant regard for the ecosystem services our natural environment provides. And I agree to a certain extent. So on Boxing Day in 2004, a tsunami hit Penang Island. These are images from that incident. This is all taken from the east coast of Penang Island. Okay, the east coast is very much fortified by coastal erosion control structures. We have seawalls, we have breakwaters, and we have rock revetments. So that's how it's fortified there. Even with that, a lot of property was destroyed and there were even loss of lives. Okay. Now on the west coast of Penang Island, this is a completely different scene. Although the first to be hit by the tsunami, it came from Sumatra, right? The epicenter was in Sumatra, and then the waves just flowed and then migrated here. So the west coast of Penang Island was hit first before it moved, and then that's where all the pictures were from just now in the previous slide. The Drive is here. So you would expect that this part of the island would experience, would be badly affected by it. But yes, the mangroves here were destroyed. Some of it was destroyed, but lives and properties were spared. Okay, there was not much damage that was encountered. And if you talk to the fishermen here, they will tell you that the mangroves saved their lives. So in many tropical and subtropical regions, mangroves reduce waves and storm surges and serve as the first line of defense against flooding and erosion. Now, these benefits are provided through the bottom friction of the roots that I showed you all just now, the tree density, how many trees there are in the forest, and also the shape. Aerial roots of the mangrove forest, they can retain the sediments and then stabilizes the soil of intertidal areas, hence reducing the erosion. The roots, trunk, and the canopy of the tree can dissipate storm surges and waves as well. So previous studies have shown that mangroves can reduce up to 66% of wave energy in the first 100 meters of the forest. Now, this video here, I like to use this video to demonstrate the superpower of mangroves in absorbing wave energy. Okay, so yeah, if you see before the waves, before they enter the mangroves, you can see that it's harsh waves, but as they enter, they get slowed down. And towards the end of the video, you see that the water is hardly moving at all. So just having 100 meters of forest width, right, between land and sea, and you can really absorb a lot of wave energy from there. Furthermore, integrating mangroves into disaster risk reduction can be more effective than infrastructure to protect coastal communities from flooding and deadly wave action. It requires relatively small investments. Okay, for example, in Vietnam, they invested about $1.1 million into mangrove forests, and that saved the country 7.3 million in sea dike maintenance and protected villages from the devastation of typhoons, like the Typhoon Mukong in 2000. So you put in $1.1 million and you get 7.3, 6 million in savings. So generally, every dollar spent protecting mangroves could yield upwards of $5 worth of climate adaptation benefits, which includes things like maintaining the access to food resources and securing protection from violent storm surges. Mangroves are also the cheapest marine or coastal nature-based solutions there are out there. Okay, it's cheaper than putting coral reefs or seagrass beds or salt marshes or oyster reefs up there. So this table here summarizes it quite aptly. The restoration costs, the total restoration costs, and then mangroves is really cheap. It's much cheaper than you building a seawall or breakwater or rock redevelopment, really, and very low in your carbon footprint as well, right? So I like to show this video of it's a very famous project using mangroves to combat climate change. This project was carried out by Wetlands International, the Indonesian government, and a company called Ecological. They've been managing this first large-scale international pilot project using mangroves as nature-based solutions in the Central Java, Indonesia, called Building with Nature Indonesia. And this is a 5-year program focused on the shoreline of the Mark, where the sea level was rising. And it's continuing to rise. And then it will cause massive flooding, affecting tens of thousands of people, causing the loss of aquaculture farms. So let's watch the video to see how they did it and what was involved. Okay.
Kami telah mengingatkan bahwa kami harus melindungi hutan mangrove dan tidak menebanginya untuk dijadikan tambak. Sekarang dengan hilangnya sebagian besar mangrove, laut telah menyapu tanggul-tanggul tambak kami hingga masuk ke daratan sekitar 1 mil. Dan desa telah kehilangan 25 baris tambaknya.
In the Demak district of North Java, Indonesia, the coastline is severely eroding as a result of sediment disturbance. Mangroves that protected the shore and held the sediment have been cut down and replaced by aquaculture ponds. To make matters worse, the land is sinking due to groundwater extraction by cities and industry. This combination of factors has left the coastline and communities exposed to the daily tides, as well as extreme weather events that are occurring more frequently due to climate change. In efforts to quell the tide, concrete seawalls were placed, but these collapsed in the salt mud and blocked the sediment transport inland. Efforts to plant mangroves also failed because the water had become too deep. A new approach was needed to restore coastal safety and revitalize the local economy. A consortium of local communities, scientists, engineers, NGOs, and the government was brought together, led by Wetlands International, Ecological, and the Indonesian government. Together, they designed an integrated solution to restore the mighty mangrove belt that once protected the land. To enhance coastal safety, permeable structures were constructed by contractors and villagers in the most severely eroding areas to trap sediment and create the right conditions for mangrove recovery. Today, communities own, monitor, and maintain the structures. In other places along the coast, unproductive aquaculture ponds were converted back into mangrove forests. In addition, local farmers received training in sustainable aquaculture practices, which boosted productivity and tripled their income. These economic benefits enabled farmers to give up part of their aquaculture ponds to make space for mangroves.
Sebelumnya kami sebelum mengikuti hasil
saya menggunakan bahan-bahan kimia. Tapi hasilnya di situ kurang memuaskan karena sering terjadi yaitu kematian udang. Adanya SL di sini, saya rubah sistemnya, yaitu memakai yang ramah lingkungan, yaitu kompostasi atau penggunaan mol. Sekarang saya mulai yaitu berbagi ilmu, berbagi pengalaman saya dan berbagi keberhasilan saya kepada kelompok-kelompok di pinggiran pantai seluruh Kabupaten Demak. Saya tunjukkan pada teman-teman, ayo bangkit, ayo jangan malas, buktinya ada.
In 5 years, this project has grown into a landscape-scale initiative along 20 kilometers of eroding coastline in central Java. The use of permeable structures to bring back mangroves has been replicated by the Indonesian government in 13 districts. Sadly, the coastal restoration efforts in Demak are severely challenged by the sinking of the land, caused by unsustainable pumping of groundwater by cities and industries nearby. Young recovering mangroves are being washed away and ponds suffer from flooding. To facilitate a solution to this land subsidence, the project partners initiated water dialogues at national and provincial level and worked with communities to help them express their needs.
Ini adalah rumah kami. Insya Allah kami berencana tetap dinamis. Saya berharap proyek ini dapat menyelamatkan dan menjadikan hutan mangrove. Saya merasakan ada harapan.
What we have been pioneering in Indonesia can be replicated elsewhere. There is no standard blueprint, and upscaling has to recognize that. Building with nature is going to be the answer to coastal protection in many places.
Solutions like this that engineer with nature can help protect not only coastlines, but also rivers, cities, and beaches. We are sharing our knowledge, training the engineers of the future, and removing policy barriers for building with nature instead of fighting against it. Join us in upscaling this approach in Indonesia, Asia, and beyond.
Yeah, so that's how it was done. As you can see, it involves many stakeholders and commitment from all parties to make nature-based solutions work. Right. So moving on, we will see how mangroves help mitigate the issue of marine and coastal pollution. At present, about 80% of land-based rubbish ends up in our sea. Okay? But before they reach the sea, some of them pass through mangroves. And many mangroves act as informal pollution mitigation zones. Mangroves absorb the excess pollutants. Okay, they filter the pollutants from rivers, nutrients from runoff, and they trap sediments, helping to increase the clarity and quality of the water. So in countries like New Caledonia, for example, mangroves even filter out heavy metals like iron, nickel, and chrome. And in many places, it filters out mercury, okay, which can bioaccumulate and eventually become neurotoxins and becomes dangerous for us. Mangroves are really these self-sacrificial ecosystems that don't get enough credit, don't you think? This ecosystem service they provide prevents pollutants from entering the ocean and endangering other marine ecosystems like coral reefs and seagrass beds and all the marine life that lives in those ecosystems. But the mangroves themselves, they die a slow death. You see, the roots, the same ones, the same complex web of roots that absorb the carbon and all that, they provide hiding spaces for the little creatures, but these roots also act as nets. Okay, they are, this web of nets, and these nets trap rubbish in them very efficiently. Okay, that's what they do. The sediments also, okay, it's so viscous, and some things that go in literally cannot come out. Like fishermen nets, for example, right? When we go sampling out, we try to remove all the rubbish that we can find while we are sampling. Okay, we try and take them out, but we can never take fishermen nets out from the the sediments because it's so thick and sticky. And besides the fisherman nets, there's also other kinds of plastics which you can never remove from there. So once it enters, it's just stuck there for an indefinite amount of time. This picture here shows it quite simply. Okay, it shows the rubbish stuck in the roots. Okay, but in actual fact, it looks like this. Okay, this is a patch of mangroves in Penang in the free trade zone. This is where I sample out. This is the urban mangrove patch that I monitor yearly. Okay. And this over here is the mangroves up here. And these are all the rubbish that gets caught. Okay, because of the roots, they have it then accumulates the mud, and then this rubbish gets stuck in the mud. So the kind of rubbish, interestingly, the kind of rubbish that you would find in the mangroves has a lot to do with what happens upstream. So here we find a lot of plastic bottles. Number one is mineral water bottles. Number two is Coca-Cola bottles. So we drink a lot of Coca-Cola. We also find a lot of styrofoam packaging, food packaging. What else do we find? We find a lot of electronic stuff because it's the free trade zone where all the factories are. So evidently, we are not managing the rubbish well enough at the source that it all ends up here. And this is just a small patch. It's just one picture. You can, just walk down the river and every step you take is like this, unfortunately. Another picture of the same location, but this one's a different one. So what do you see here? This is a mangrove tree, although died already, but yeah, the roots are here. And then we call this the Christmas tree, in fact, because you hang all the decoration on the Christmas tree, right? But this is not decoration, these plastic bags. So sadly, this is the situation our urban mangroves are facing right now. So yeah, that's the story. And we haven't even started talking about the microplastics. Microplastics are pieces of plastics that's less than 5 millimeters long and can be really harmful to our oceans and aquatic life. So it said that every week we swallow 1 credit card worth of microplastics into our body. Well, we defecate most of it out, but if it gets stuck, then of course it is hazardous to our health. So yes, mangroves may be a solution for land-based pollution to some extent, but the ecosystem itself is highly at risk from doing so. Okay, finally, also the most important to me, how mangroves are this biodiverse ecosystem that maintains the much needed coastal biodiversity and its services that is decreasing at an unprecedented rate in our world right now. So we need this biodiversity and their services to survive. At average decline of 68% in the past 50 years is really catastrophic and clear evidence of damage human activity is doing to our natural world. Okay, let's first look at why biodiversity is so important to us. Okay, in economic terms, biodiversity provides humans with materials for consumption and production. It supports livelihoods of farmers, fishermen, timber workers, who are really dependent on this biodiversity to survive, right? Next, in terms of ecological life support, biodiversity provides functioning ecosystems that supply us with oxygen to breathe, clean air and water to drink, pollination of plants, pest control, wastewater treatment, and many other ecosystem services. Other than that, in terms of recreation, many recreational pursuits rely on our unique biodiversity, okay, such as the bird watching and the hiking and the camping and the fishing. Our whole tourism industry, okay, our tourism industry also depends on this biodiversity, how unique it is. So a lot of my collaborators come from overseas just to see this uniqueness, right, in mangroves. And some of them even reach Penang already. They will they rent a car and they drive to Matang just to see these mangroves for themselves. Matang is so famous, right? It's the most well-managed mangroves in the world. So yeah, people come to see this. So that's recreation and tourism right there. In terms of culture, the Malaysian culture is also closely connected to biodiversity through the expression of identity, through spirituality, through aesthetics. And the Orang Asli, for example, have strong connections and obligation to biodiversity arising from spiritual beliefs about the animals and plants there. So I've never really understood spiritual beliefs until I sampled in one of the, for life of me, cannot remember which patch of mangroves. I walked in a distance and I saw a Chinese temple in the middle of the mangrove. So that was the connecting point for me, spirituality, spiritual beliefs, and a natural ecosystem. In scientific terms, biodiversity represents a wealth of systematic ecological data that helps us to understand our natural world and its origins. So any loss or deterioration in the condition of biodiversity can compromise all these values outlined, okay, and affect our human well-being. The collapse of biodiversity would also have serious effect on our economy, okay, our financial stability, like it can reduce our national GDP, it can affect our health and our well-being. And that is why it is so important. We cannot let it collapse especially for us in the developing country where the impact of climate change and loss of biodiversity will be more severe. Okay. And these are all the ecosystem services mangroves provide, okay, versus what we needed just now, and this is what it provides. So it basically covers everything, right? So truly, if we keep the mangroves intact, it can be a power to be reckoned with. It provides us with all the ecosystem services that I have presented and more, okay, others including securing livelihoods, securing physical and mental health, food security, of course, nutrition through fisheries, and this can all strengthen resilience towards climate change. Others are what produce timber, okay, wood for timber and fuel. So really they can do so much, provided they are planned and implemented in the right way and in the right place. I repeat, in the right places with the right approaches for that area. Okay, and that's inclusive of governance as well. Because if not, then there is a large risk of maladaptation. Okay? So scientists and practitioners, they really need to come together. We really need to come together and start communicating with each other to get this to work, okay, to its fullest potential. This just in from yesterday, just to illustrate how far all this goes. The World Bank and Bank Negara produced a report on nature-related financial risks in Malaysia. And you can see here how the disruption of different ecosystem services could affect Malaysian banks, according to the rankings. So you have things like reduced ecosystem services, what would happen, sudden unexpected climate policy introduction, ecosystem deterioration. So all these things will affect even banks. So really the effects are far-reaching. Okay, so I'm at the end of my presentation right now. It's just some ending remarks. At the moment, key innovations in nature-based solutions have not been matched by finance-led funds, which tends to favor established mechanisms by the grey infrastructure, okay, at a national scale. Now, this all has to change. We need to be protecting and restoring this precious ecosystem so that they can keep providing us with the services and continue to feed people, to provide us with clean air, clean water, the basic necessities that's lacking in many countries around the world right now. Okay, protect us from natural disasters. Generally, MBS requires long lead times because they need to grow and establish themselves before they can reach their full potential. So this requires us to act quickly, okay, to act now, to reduce this risk in time. We need political commitment We need persistence and consistent action across scales of government and mobilization of humans, our financial capital, even when the benefits are not immediately visible. Okay, it won't be immediately visible because it's a living things, right? They need time to grow, to establish themselves, to give us these ecosystem services. But the benefits of putting something natural instead of artificial is really astounding, presented in the slides before. So we must do everything in our power to protect, restore, and fund this sort of nature-based solutions. Okay, because the mangroves, they can only exercise their power and be the solutions we need only if we let them. Okay, that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Audrey, back to you.
Thank you very much, Suyin. I like the way that you systematically describe all these the powers carried out or provided by mangroves. Is very clear and concise. And I like also that you pointed this recent document. I've downloaded. I haven't read it, but the commitment by central banks, particularly for us, it's Bank Negara. And we know Bank Negara is actually suggesting or influencing all banks in Malaysia to also participate and be prepared actually, because they are part of our economic development, and they must do it sustainably as well. They must not support unsustainable activities from now on, and hopefully contribute also to the better conservation and management of our resources. So there you go. We have now commitment from the key economic sector. I mean the key economic player in economic sector. Sorry about that. And of course we have managers, researchers on the environmental side, and local communities, not to forget. And and then now how these we formulate economy, social well-being, and environment to fulfill or to achieve our sustainable development goals. Like you mentioned in the earlier part of your lecture. So there you go. Thank you very much for highlighting that. And I also like when you highlighted about the preparation. Briefly, maybe while waiting for questions from our participants today. How prepared are we? Suyin, in your opinion, like you mentioned about retreating or receding from coastlines, right? Based on this information, like 2030, 2050, some areas will be drowned. So in your opinion, how are we prepared? Maybe at this local point of view, or state-wide, or maybe nationally?
I think we are starting to embark on finding some mitigation steps towards this erosion and the sea level rise affecting our coastlines. I think in research-wise, we are definitely mapping all these areas and starting to plan how we are going to retreat when the sea level rises. But on the ground, I think things can be communicated more effectively to the people, especially those who are living along the coastlines, and especially how you are going to move when all these things happen. So I think these things, the signs should be communicated to the coastal community, to get them be prepared when something like this is happening. But there should be more communication in a sense.
Yep, I agree. So communication, we need information from local community for sure. But then we also need a receptive and responsive local authorities and government also.
Yes,
right?
I totally agree with that.
They need to be flexible also, because we know in our kind of planning, we have these 5 years, 10 years plans, and that must be flexible as well. Considering all this information. So more communications, like you also highlighted, that we need to collaborate more also, right?
Yes.
So scientists with communities, scientists with authorities, authorities with local community, and not just limited to us in Malaysia. We have to learn. I mean, I like that you pointed this Wetland International's project, Building with Nature in Indonesia. It is a good example actually for us in this region.
Correct.
You see, Indonesia and Philippines, I know, right? Yeah, so they've gone through this aquaculture boom a decade or two before us.
That's right.
And they've felt the heat in the late 90s, while we in Malaysia we
really,
right?
Yeah, we have so really good examples for us to follow, and I really think that, you know, by true collaboration and communication of the science, we really can overcome this. You know, provided you know, the people higher up, you know, in the ranks to listen, you know, and come together, discuss, and how these things can be carried out in a more development can be carried out in a more sustainable manner.
So governance-wise, I mean, so in you as a researcher at USM, for example, and then of course we collaborate a lot with friends in other universities. But do you see your input to the government being appreciated or being listened or being taken into account so far from your experience?
Honestly, I have not seen it. I've spoken a few times to state government. We have had roundtables with the federal government, but I don't know. Going back to the same sampling sites and looking at the condition throughout the years, I started sampling I'm taking Penang for example. I started sampling in Penang in the urban and peri-urban mangroves since 2017. So that's been 5 years. So even right at the beginning, I wrote articles. I tried my best to highlight these issues, but year after year, I go back, and year after year, I still see the same thing. So I don't know, maybe there's something that I haven't done, or, you know, I don't know. I have not seen it.
Maybe just like, I mean, the mangrove needs time to re-establish, to regenerate, and so the response by the authorities, hopefully. But yeah, we keep working on that.
But people tend to go for the immediate, something that shows you immediate results, and that's not something nature does, you know. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we can get on board in doing things more sustainably, I feel.
Agree, yeah. And then of course, I mean, we need to enhance our fundamental knowledge on mangrove as well, right? So to feed or to have comprehensive knowledge and to influence decisions as well. I see one hand, Hazlin raises her hand, but at the same time, I saw, okay, let's go with the ladies first, if Dr. Harinder is okay. Yeah. So please, Dr. Hazlin, if you have any comment or question.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Dr. Audrey, and thank you, Dr. Sains, for a very, very wonderful talk. I'm actually a newcomer here in terms of mangrove research. I'm doing microbial work, specifically looking at the sediments of mangroves. And I just got out of Sungai Pulai last weekend. So that was actually my first time being there, and we sampled a few sediment cores there. And then I spoke to one of the boatmen, right? I'm not sure whether he's a fisherman or what, but I mean, he took us there, and we were looking for a place, a mangrove area that's relatively untouched, but that was a bit difficult because he was telling us that there was like active, I'm not sure if it's active, but it's regular deforestation of the mangroves. But they do it as such that the edge of the mangrove is not, like, they're not disturbed, but the deforestation happens you know,
Inside.
more the inside part. So I was wondering whether is that like a sustainable way of doing it, because we know that, you know, there are stakeholders, right? I mean, there are people living there that do need the, you know, I guess as a source of income, right?
Yes.
So that, you know, the state government or whoever, the authorities, let them do that on a regular basis. So in your opinion, is that a sustainable way of of managing? Of course, I mean, of course, being scientists and we know the data and all that, of course, the I guess the correct way or the right way would be just to conserve it 100%.
Yeah.
But in reality, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes, I do know. Because right now there is this patch of mangroves in Penang on Pantai Malindo, and that patch of mangroves is a mangrove reserve. It's a forest reserve. And if you look at it through Google Earth, and you can see they are building roads, highways, just adjacent to the forest reserve. And they try not to touch it. You can see the roads just skirting very nearly to the mangroves there. And I'm like thinking, this is, I don't know, you know, any kind of disturbance that is near a mangrove forest reserve would affect then the trees and the biodiversity that is within it. You know, having such a large scale development that's so near a mangrove forest reserve definitely isn't a good thing. My first inkling is definitely first to protect, restore, and fund anything that supports the goals of these nature-based solutions. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter where you develop, you know, if it's inside or outside, it's still disturbing the mangroves for me.
Yeah. But how do you balance then? I mean, because, you know, the people there probably still want to harvest some, right? Like you can't just
Yeah. I think harvesting
them
by the local community is very sustainable because they don't take a lot at the same time. You know, they take a few, you know, to just for their sources of income and all that. It's not something that development would do. You know, clearing large scale clearings that would destroy, you know, large areas at one go. It definitely, the local harvesters, the way they do it, it won't harm the conditions of the mangroves the way large scale developments do. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
just to
Thank
add
you.
on to Hazlin's concern, Sungai Pulai, as you know, it is a forest reserve. There, I mean, big portion of Sungai Pulai mangroves is protected as forest reserve, and at the same time, Sungai Pulai also is a Ramsar site. But they are different with Tanjung Piai and Pulau Kukuh. These two sites are also a Ramsar site, but they are managed or governed under Taman Negara Johor. So these are two different approaches in management. So as you know, forest reserve, like behind me, this is Matang Mangrove Forest Reserve, and you know, out of these 40,000 hectares, I think I can't remember the allocation, but the larger chunk is production forest, meaning they can extract timber for charcoal production, for example, or pole, and but then they will allow that compartment to be naturally regenerated or assisted in regeneration. So this is the management system they have in Matang. So they are famous for this 30-year rotation cycle.
Yeah.
And Sungai Pulai has this management plan, their own management plan as well. So the one you've seen, maybe that could be within that management regime. So, but then we have to also be careful. And this is where local communities can play their part, because we know patrolling by forestry department cannot be done like comprehensively because Sungai Pulai is huge. Yeah, I think it's the second largest after Matang in Peninsular Malaysia. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think some representative from forestry department is with us, Cik Jamal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Sungai Pulai is very huge areas. So this is where authorities can work with local communities, and we know around Seletar. Yeah, I think you've come across a few villages of orang asli in Sungai Pulai, Hazlin. So orang Seletar is there, and then local Malay villages all over at the fringe of Sungai Pulai. So this is where communities can play their role. First, not to encroach, and secondly, be the eyes and ears for the authorities, and may report if strange extraction or strange encroachment happening in Sungai Pulai. So it is not as, I mean, Sungai Pulai management plan has not been as long as Matang, but yeah, they have a slightly different approach than Matang. So we hope they engage also with local scientists to study and to ensure that this is a sustainable management plan. Yeah. So your concern is very, very, very valid. And then of course we know also physical development happening in Johor. Johor is very rapidly developing, and yeah, the stress and pressure and the need for land is there, but we have to prioritize. So this is the message that we want to deliver to local authority, to state authorities, because land is a state matter. I mean, this is a known already, but then we need to find that balance. So balance is the key, I think. Yeah. So economic development, I mean, we can be creative. Yeah? I mean, if a country like Thailand can stop logging and timber production from their forest reserve, why can't we? Yeah? So this is another approach that we're looking into. So finding alternatives. So that goes to, thank you again, Dr. Hazlin, for your comment and question. And this actually leads to, yeah, thank you. And this leads to earlier question in the chat. Dr. Harinder actually posed a question here, but he I think he just left.
Yeah.
But the question is, yeah. So through nature-based solutions, have we seen any strong support from private and governments, particularly in funding, and yeah, and focusing on coastal communities? Have we seen any, by the way, Dr. Suyin? I'm asking myself.
Yeah, I think the federal government is really putting some stress on this, because I do see a lot of funds. Some funds being allocated now to nature-based solutions. Mangroves got or not, Audrey? I cannot think of any.
I haven't come across, but there are of course supports for planting activity.
Planting, yes.
Yeah, sometimes they just do it by themselves. Some connecting with local communities, some connecting with local authorities. But yeah, funding like a comprehensive one. A huge, solid nature-based solution, I can't think of any.
Yeah, I know there was one for coral reefs recently, putting artificial reefs out on the coastline, nearshore reefs from Ketsa. There's one win for that. But others,
I think this is a very good question. I mean, we find a gap now. There's a huge gap here, so it could actually link to policy, bridging policy, to allow, to promote funding, to promote support, financially, human resource context into nature-based solutions. Because what we've mentioned earlier could be like some section of the whole picture. So I think we've done that. That's all these pieces. So it's just to combine and I mean, bind these pieces together, right? So it could be a solid one. So I think they have to refer to your paper that distributed out, like in the paper also we have pointed that the gap is to get to patch all these pieces together,
right? And also consider all the how each ecosystem is connected to the next.
Correct.
It's also really
connectivity. Yes, connectivity is very important also, and that's another lack that we have. We are still looking at all these habitats, all these compartmentalized management, right? So Yeah, so if we can connect, we can see the connection between mangroves and rivers, rivers with islands, and look at them as in one. But of course, this depends on the governance structure as well, right?
Yeah.
And then that leads, so there's Prof. John Yong also commented as response to that. So any nature-based solutions require long-term and stable funding, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And not easy to get such funding and support from government. So he suggested this one example from China. I think we can click on the link he provide. Oh yeah, there's John. If you want to respond verbally.
John?
No, that is just a comment, just to share with you. We are very fortunate. It took 16 years to get this 10-year funding. But Suin, could you update us on the relationship between the state government and federal government on the management of mangrove? I think this is the most important thing to go forward. Yeah. That means the relationship. I think not many our younger colleagues may not fully understand the Malaysian mangrove management, like, state is managing the mangrove, then the research is supposed to be done at the federal level. So some updates will be great if you can, or from Audrey.
Yeah, I think Audrey will be better person to answer.
I think it will be good to say, because I think we have a lot of new people. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, we are gaining good traction actually. Research on mangrove is receiving like many new responses, new interests also, not just within Malaysia, John, actually coming from throughout the world. So people are starting to look back to Malaysia on mangroves, and as you know, Malaysia has been the reference for mangrove management, mangrove research since the early 1900s. So we are back to gaining this attention. And your point is very crucial to be understood in doing research in Malaysia, because as I mentioned earlier, land is a state matter. So like, for example, forest behind me, this is under the jurisdiction of the state. So state is the landowner, not forestry department. Forestry department is the manager for this particular compartment of forest or forest reserve area. So they are responsible to enforce the National Forestry Act. In this case, National Forestry Act, there you go, national, that's a federal law, but state has to adapt it by having their own ordinances or enactments. Particularly in Peninsular Malaysia, they have enactments and ordinances in Sabah and Sarawak. And to enforce this law, they have to have enough human resource. They need rangers, they need foresters to patrol. Now, not just to patrol, not to find the culprit, but to manage the management system, to run the management system. So a lot of things for them to do within that limited human resource. So that's where we propose for more interaction with communities, because we haven't seen in Malaysia also, we haven't seen any forest reserve being managed by communities, for example. So community-based resource management has not happened in Malaysia for now. But we have, for example, Taman Alam Kuala Selangor. Kuala Selangor Nature Park is an area, a nature park managed or I can say managed by Malaysian Nature Society, for example. But then again, this area is not yet gazetted as a forest reserve. It is underway, I hope, and hopefully we can also list it as a Ramsar site or a UNESCO Man Biosphere Reserve, to enhance or to attract better support for its better management. So there you go. There are a few layers there. If you note, John, federal can come up with acts, but it can only be enforced by having state enactments and ordinances. So, and then research, So to do research in forest reserve, for example, we have to, in Peninsular Malaysia, we have to apply for permission from the DG, Director General of the Forestry Department of Peninsular Malaysia. But then that you have permit to carry out research. But then to enter the forest reserve, you still have to get permit from state authorities or the district forest office to enter. Yeah? So they're very nice, very beautiful rules and regulations. But then coordinating research is another thing. Yeah, there you go. And this is where I think MyMangrove is playing, we have to play like a very important role here. Like, for example, identifying gaps in research, gaps in knowledge to promote research. So there you go. For example, today we've found that a few points and niches for us to further proceed. So it can be taken. So that we are passing the baton to the younger groups of researchers. There you go. We can see the lack of knowledge, for example, even carbon. Yeah, Dr. Suyin did mention some information about carbon, but we don't have solid information about carbon in Matang, in Balik Pulau. So we've learned that Balik Pulau was affected by the tsunami itself, but local community was not affected in Balik Pulau. But then how much carbon was lost from that tsunami event itself? No data at all from Malaysia. So there you go. So research-wise, I think we the researchers are very strongly bonded through this network, and more and more discussions can be carried out. And hopefully with participation from authorities, government agencies, we can communicate this more fluently and clearly. And I see actually, good progress in scientists participating in research in mangroves, and also response from the governments. They want to learn. They want to do it better, to make it better. And just to highlight, actually, I've received from my good friend just now, just 5-10 minutes before your talk, Suyin, this one a screenshot of YB Nurul Izzah, highlighting her concern about a land reclamation project in Muar. And her point is, okay, so now this area have a huge amount of mangrove, but they are not protected. So and the state authorities, of course, because it's not protected, then it's always very risky, right? Even protected forests is risky of facing this stress and pressure from development and natural disturbances as well, but more so for unprotected areas. So this is another fight we're fighting. So there's just a few more unprotected mangrove area there are in Malaysia that needs further commitment from state authorities. So we have friends like Suyin is our agent there in Penang. So she and her team will have like a solid understanding on Penang mangrove, and also of course your colleague Dr. Fong and many other in Penang that can collaborate to ensure like better management of Penang mangrove. But and also of course we have to work nationally also, Suyin, because just a few of us here in Malaysia working on mangrove, right? So we are expanding this interest to larger communities, and with the support of you, John, students and researchers from Europe, particularly Sweden, and we also have colleagues from Belgium, Germany, that are very interested in our mangrove in Malaysia. So we are expanding this knowledge throughout.
I'm listening in is because I'm based here, so I have access to those long-term 10 years. So Suyin, that's my purpose of listening in. I sent you one Wageningen thesis already.
Yes.
So the last question to all of you, especially Suyin, all right, based on your talk, there are two main constraints. Of course, the first one you highlight about pollution. Then the second one, you talk about the ability for the mangrove to migrate backwards or forward, depending on the sea level. Okay, so bearing in mind the issues of sea walls and all that. So the big question to you, which is a bigger threat to mangrove based on what you know so far? Is it the pollution or the human blockage of the ability of mangrove to migrate up or down? Which do you think is bigger issue, pollution or the movement of mangrove, the natural succession?
That is a difficult question.
That is why I'm asking you.
To
And,
choose.
and I will do my best to find money and get Audrey to be the thing. And hey, you have the agent here. I'm the marketing.
I've reserved this for the last question, but John reads my mind. So there you go, Suyin.
That's the toughest question, but that will give you the long-term funding, really. And I would
the biggest
work for
gap
you.
for today.
I don't know, because from what I see, pollution is a big issue for urban mangroves, not so much the peri-urban ones. In terms of having those structures, I mean, a lot of our coastal mangroves on the east coast of Penang Island has been, destroyed to make way for all these structures. So for me to choose, I would think I'm more passionate with the structures, actually. I'm more passionate with the structures. I think only in Penang, I can speak for me because I do my research here. A lot of the mangrove destruction is due to development, not only from building residential areas, commercial areas, and all that, roads and infrastructure. But yeah, it also involves those aquaculture farms on the west coast of Penang Island. There's a lot of aquaculture farms that are being built. So I think for me, the most major between the two, I would think that infrastructure and development is the more major threat compared to pollution for me in Penang.
Right,
Dr. Audrey, your comments?
Yeah, there you go. So there you go. I've already discovered this one major gap, John. Okay, let's write with Suyin of applying this one grant to to identify. We know the drivers. Yeah, we know the drivers of forest loss or that limit the dynamic processes of mangrove. So now we want to know the rate of pressures of drivers. Yeah, so we need to get a lot of information on the rate of pollution impacting mangrove, as well as this pressure coming from hybrid disturbances. Yeah, that pushes mangrove landward. Yeah, zonal shift. So and then, as I've already highlighted before, also, because they need buffer to play this buffering role, right? We know them as a buffer zone for our coast, but they need themselves a buffer at the back to allow for these natural processes to happen. And yeah, so I think this is also a stepping stone to that big adaptation plan that you've highlighted just now, Suyin. So for 2030, 2050, for example, plans to relocate or to develop inland development. So this is a stepping stone. So meaning allow creating buffers first, and then and so on and so forth. So okay, so let's plan for a meeting for that grant writing. All right. So thank you, Suyin, for that input. And for pollution, for example, particularly plastic, we will have in the coming month input and a super interesting talk from maybe Dr. Moritz Muller. Yeah. Yes. So I think he chose July for his talk. So let's look forward for that discussion. And along the way, also we will have discussion on other influences or disturbances in mangrove, for example, pathogenic impact, impact on microorganism activities within mangrove. So yeah, we along the way, throughout this year, we will have good solid information to work on that proposal as well, John. Yeah. All right. So I think if there's one or two last burning question or comments from the crowd today. I cannot check what's happening on YouTube, but Suyin, if you have time, maybe you can just visit the chat or maybe the discussion on YouTube. Yeah, and if that's the case, no more question, right? Have you seen any? Yeah, I think that's the last comment from John. So any final words from you, Suyin, or maybe we can I invite the rest of the crowd to, okay, there's one, wait, let me very quickly read. There's a comment from Andrea Chin. Oh, WWF, yes, Sarawak Conservation Program. Sharing from us, WWF goal is to have at least 8,000 hectares of mangrove and dolphin conservation in Rajang Belawai Palo. Oh, okay, this is just an acknowledgement. Yeah, so yeah, there you go. So conserving mangrove for biodiversity, like highlighted by Suyin just now. So and we know also, and we will have also Dr. Louisa Panampalam from Mareset to discuss with us about marine mammals and their connection to mangrove habitat. So Andrea, if you do stay tuned for the next series of talks, yeah, on MyMangrove monthly discourse. So we will have one specialized talk on marine mammals and mangrove. And of course, yeah, and then we also have other organisms, dependent on mangrove as well. And that's where we totally support that. And do let us know, do update us from time to time about the updates from Sarawak. And
yeah. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Andrea. Yes,
this is Andrea. Yeah, from WWF. Yes. I'm very happy to attend this seminar by Doctor. And just to share, we do have a mangrove project here. It's a first for. I'm sorry, I didn't turn off my camera to save the bandwidth. I hope you can hear me well. So we just started with a mangrove and dolphin conservation project in it's a delta area near Rajang, Belawai, Palo. So a lot of people don't know that we do have dolphin here in Sarawak and it's critically endangered. So this program is a project like an interagency coordination between Sarawak Forestry, with Corporation, Forest Department, STIDC, UNIMAS, and WWF, and it's chaired by Sarawak Forestry. So we involve the community participation work, try to help them manage the conservation activities because most of the locals there is highly dependent on the mangrove for livelihood, fishermen. So we are WWF are very welcoming and happy to know that mangrove awareness like this is coming together. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us, Andrea. And yeah, perhaps we can have this one special session also with you and your team perhaps soon to share with us some progress and updates. And also perhaps I hear quite a good connection and collaboration with other organizations there for that project. So that's a very good start also, and that could be one major component to answer our earlier question on the support towards nature-based solution. And as we know, there are so many components of roles and functions of mangrove, like highlighted by Dr. Suyin earlier. So we can answer actually many of the components actually by protecting mangrove for dolphins. But actually we are also doing it for communities, for economic development, for sustainability. So there you go. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, and all the best with with the project there and your team. So
thank you, Andrea.
And do stay in touch with us through our Facebook group. Okay.
Sure, I will leave my contact in the chat too.
Please do. Thank you very much. So okay, so just to close our session today, if it's okay with the whole team, if you can turn on your camera for a while, so it's a memento for Cik Jamal. Yes, Jamal.
So
yes,
I just checked with Johor Forestry.
Okay.
Regarding the Dr. Azlin, she went to Singapore, right?
Correct.
Actually, the hectareage for Singapore is more than 3,000 hectares of mangroves. Pure mangroves.
Pure mangrove, So virgin jungle reserve kot, I assume, Cik Jamal?
There's a few compartments that still virgin lah.
Okay.
And
So, there you go.
and then there's also some authorization in the area also. And that's why Dr. Azlin found that somebody is cutting the trees.
Correct. Yeah, this is very good information. Thank you, Cik Jamal. So,
I just received the info from Johor. That's why I did respond earlier.
Thank you. This is why we need you, Cik Jamal, to join us in all our communication.
Regarding
to get that first-hand information.
Jin Yong, we at federal level, we do supply some money to the state for planting. So every state in Malaysia, we have some allocation of planting for every state for every year for the last 15-16 years after tsunami.
Correct.
So we already started giving monies to the state government to replant all the mangrove areas and other beach areas with suitable species. So we are not concentrating on only mangroves, but also other species such as ketapang, Becangong calophyllum, Segezium. So all those laut species we also planted lah. So until today we recorded that we already more than 3,000 hectares already for the last 16 years. But we that one only under the forestry department, but also we are collaborating with NGOs and communities also. So every year we also get some participation from them. Okay. Thanks, Adel.
Thank you very much, Cik Jamal. That's very important point also, John, to answer your earlier question. The support from federal government to states and to local communities. So there you go. So much of the funding actually come from federal, but as we've suggested, state authorities have the power also, right? Have this, they can play better roles or more effort to actually gain support from corporates, for example.
They have their own funding also.
Correct.
But, in terms of federal and state, then we in the federal level, we also give allocation to the state.
Yeah, I think that's a responsibility played by federal to support states' effort. But again, as state as a land owner, I think tuan tanah, I think they have to work harder also, to push for more conservation and restoration also, Cik Jamal. Anyway, thank you for your participation and the support from Federal Forestry Department of Peninsular Malaysia, and of course to the state authorities that have been working very hard also to maintain the size and maybe to expand their mangrove area. But I like the point earlier by Cik Jamal. So within this large chunk of forest reserve, like I mentioned, bigger portion are actually forest production forest, but there are also patches of virgin jungle reserve, and I think Cik Jamal is referring to this 3,000 hectares within Sungai Pulai as a more pristine. So this is another comment or maybe suggestion to researchers also collaborate with the foresters and local authorities to actually guide and take us to the targeted forest patches or sites. So this also will promote good communication with authorities and local communities also. So always keep good rapport with them, and referring to the authorities and communities, of course, and to better communicate our findings, because if I write an article, it could only be read by John and Suyin, so we need other ways of communication to deliver these messages to the wider community. So this is one way.
Encik Jamal, terima kasih for that sharing. So this is where you need publicity to really highlight federal and state level support for mangrove because of the law, and now how Encik Jamal, your department, get Audrey, get Swing to write an article, one scientific and one layman, and you show nice graph how much federal money masuk the different state. And the resultant acreage and some ecological survey, very cantik, very cantik.
Yes.
Very nice. Then if you need some input, then we have something. I've already given the Singapore input to Sue In already. The problems that we face, we don't have states, we don't have all that, but we also have departmental issues, okay? So there was a very nice thesis that I sent to Sue In. So right now, use, Dr. Audrey, use Dr. Sue In, write a very nice thing to show federal allocation, because now it's like people outside feel like, including me, I'm Singaporean, but I'm part of MNS. We feel like there's not a lot of coordination. So you need one nice cantik berita harian, you know, that sort of thing, and a science one to see allocation. Wah, bagus.
Good.
Encik Jamal, idea for you.
That's another good suggestion.
Me and Dr. Adri already in good position of
yeah, we will discuss that for sure.
With some statistics, nice pictures, bagus.
Correct. And we need an infographic designer for that then. So you see, like Suyin highlighted also, it's not just scientists, not just managers like Cik Jamal, but we need social scientists, we need designers, we need filmmaker. So this is another venture. Maybe John, if you can find or engage Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie to act in Matang.
You look at the Singapore National Parks if you have time, under Channel News Asia.
Correct.
Okay, they really have a lot. So just go to CNA. Their thing, they ramp it up a lot more already. So just masuk CNA or the free documentary. Okay, they have but of course they get a big budget. So they are pushing more for that sort of understanding.
And we can do better because we have larger, we have higher diversity maybe, more attractions to highlight. So there you go, Cik Jamal. Be prepared for some proposal from us in a bit.
Because we already looking at the Sungai Buloh in Singapore. We are thinking whether Tanjung Piai, our own Tanjung Piai can compete with Sungai Buloh in Singapore.
Sungai Buloh, I am very frank. Sungai Buloh is dependent on the propagule from Malaysia and Indonesia. we all know it very well. Though this is why I'm like people like me. Earlier before the cooperation, I went over to Kukup, already connected with Johor Park. So we know the importance already. But the country level, slow lah, because of the politics. So at the personal level and through MNS, we already connected with Johor Parks and all that. That's why Sue In's contribution is very important. Her overarching thing is the glue to make the social people comes in. So now, Audrey, over to you to sell the state and federal connection.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. It's always in my mind actually, just to find this booster from you, John, from Jamal, from Suyin, and the rest that participate. I see a few more comments coming in the chat. So thank you very much for the communication and for joining this discussion. And I see very nice hope, good hope, for better management. There are a few more agendas actually we are putting up, and it's not a pressure for Forestry Department, but just some proposals, some ideas for us to make things better. As I always highlighted also to some of my colleagues and friends, exactly 22 years ago, I had this one study site in Klang for my undergraduate thesis. And then I left it, I ventured into some other topics, and I went for my PhD, and I came back to look at a historical change, for example, or maybe revisit that site, but it's already under a highway on the way to Klang. So if we don't have a long-term monitoring study areas or long-term monitoring data, we will lack a lot of information or evidence for good ecological projection, climate projection, and a lot of other information, we will lose that. So protecting will be one way, conserving will be one way, restoring will be another topic. That will contribute to everything that Dr. Su Yin has highlighted earlier. So again, thank you very much, everyone. My second request to everyone again to turn on your camera, for a group photo, because later at the end of this year I can frame it for Dr. Su Yin's album. So she will put, oh, thank you all for coming. So yeah. There you go. Oh, I see Dr. Kang from UTM is here with us. Thank you, Kang, for joining. Andrea, thank you for joining all the way from Sarawak. And yeah, if I can get the rest. Some say Grace say her camera is not working. It's okay. Okay. I'll give another 10 seconds maybe. For Amy. Hi, Amy. How are you?
With Dr. Kang this morning.
Oh, yeah, Kang. Yeah, Dr. Kang and Dr. Prof. Kasturi is they are having these big plans also for training programs and some research on mangrove training, and then focusing on remote sensing and GIS. So there you go. That's another key expertise that we require in the big team. And okay, and I see Prof. Moritz Azani. Hi, how are you and the kids? These are young mangrovers we are grooming for to become scientists in just 1 decade. We will expect them in another 10 years to be our spokesperson for mangrove research. Okay. But of course they want to follow their dad playing with crocodiles. Also, yes. Andrea playing with crocodiles in Belawai in apa nama Rajang. Okay, so okay, smile. 1, 2, 3. Sun Una Renda. All right. So there you go. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. That's all for our March edition of the Malaysian Mangrove Research Alliance and Network monthly discourse. And thank you again, Dr. Su Yin, for your time and for your effort in preparing your beautiful slides, beautiful presentation for all of us, very systematic. Thank you very much. And next in our series, we will fly to Terengganu next month in April. It will be fasting month. So we will be listening to Dr. Maiza Abdullah from Universiti Malaysia Terengganu. The topic and the theme is still secret. So stay tuned on our MyMangrove Facebook group for information and details, and keep sharing, keep updating us of your research, of your conservation work, of any updates about mangroves surrounding you, for better understanding by all of us the mangrove clan throughout Malaysia and throughout the world. So with that, happy mangroving. Stay safe, take care, and thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody.
Audrey, do I stay or do I leave?
Okay. Okay, let me stop the live session.
Okay.
And so thank you again, Yusuyin.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the invitation.
No problem.